One of our three themes for this course is the rise of the United States as a world power. The United States, at the beginning of this course, right after the American Civil War, is not a world power in terms of influence, right? Maybe an economic power, but even then, it's more in a infantile stage, right? So the United States is going to become a world power after the Civil War, particularly right at the end of the 19th century. So before we could talk about that, we also need to talk about foreign policy. There are two types of foreign policies, moralistic and realistic, all right? A realistic foreign policy is one that's grounded on your interests, national security, economic interests, right? So you have that kind of foreign policy. A moralistic or even an idealistic type of foreign policy is one that's grounded in kind of pie in the sky type of things, right? Kind of like running your foreign policy to spread the blessings of American civilization and American democracy and helping out other people. Now, can you run the two policies together? Absolutely, right? You can have a realistic foreign policy and a moralistic foreign policy at the same time. Look at Vietnam. We were in Vietnam because the United States thought that the national security is going to be threatened if all of Vietnam becomes communist, right? And at the same time, we're also pursuing a policy that makes South Vietnam be the beneficiaries of democracy. So you can have these two types of foreign policies going on. Now, I want you to keep those two policies in mind from now on when it comes to your evaluation of American foreign policy. In the 1890s, the United States was once more going to become expansionistic. Remember, back in the first half of U.S. history, we talked about a manifest destiny of the United States, of an empire going from sea to shining sea, from the Atlantic to the Pacific. Well, by the time we get to this course, by the time we get to the second half of U.S. history, that dream has already been realized. So now we need to go further, right? And how are we going to go further? Well, first stop is going to be Hawaii. Now, the United States had an economic interest in Hawaii. First missionaries are going to go there. Then they figured out, hey, look, this area is really good for sugar and other things, right? So we were going to have, by the 1890s, a very strong economic interest in Hawaii. Now, in Hawaii, there's going to be a ruling family. Hawaii back then was a kingdom, and it had a ruling family. And that ruling family, led by a queen that historians nickname Queen Lil, is going to be basically going through a campaign of Hawaii for Hawaiians, right? The United States felt its interests were under threat, and there's a lot more to it. But because the United States believed that the economic interests of the nation are under threat, the United States will intervene in this Hawaii for Hawaiian campaign. In 1893, there's a revolution going against her, and she's going to be overthrown. At first, she's dealing very well with it, but then the American minister there is going to basically land a company of Marines on the grounds to protect American property and lives, i.e., they're seeing to it that this rebellion succeeds. She's overthrown, a provisional government is set up under the leadership of a man named Sanford Dole, and next thing you know, there's a treaty of annexation between the United States and Hawaii. Now, remember in 1893, the President of the United States here is Grover Cleveland, and one of his watchwords of his leadership was honesty. And he said that if you took this revolution, this rebellion, and you flipped it over, you would see "Made in the USA" stamped on over it, i.e., it's not honest. It's a dishonest revolution. So he refused to sign any sort of annexation treaty. It will not be until his successor, President William McKinley, that will sign a treaty and make Hawaii a U.S. territory in 1898.